You probably started investing because you were excited about new tech. You probably even supported crypto. But then what happened this week? Oil is working towards new highs. We've got geopolitical tensions just coming from everywhere. And you really just don't know what's happening. Well, we'll show you what US Iran tensions are doing to oil, why that matters for inflation and rates, and the exact levels that decide whether risk assets break out or roll over. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Strategic Markets into our midweek session. And first up on the docket, we have oil hovering on near 7 month highs ahead of the US Iran talks. Now, if you by any chance have had your head in the sand recently, or you do know, US and Iran are having some serious tensions relevant to war and basically which sides people are taking in very simple terms. And what that basically means is people are hedging towards oil. Okay. Now, why oil? Well, for any military function, you need oil, whether it's movement, transportation, actual use of artillery, or anything like that. Basically, that is what gets affected first whenever there is any tensions of war. And what has that actually done? Well, according to this report over here, we are actually coming towards 7 month highs, which actually does line up because when we look at spot Brent crude oil pricing, we can see over here that the last time crude oil was around this price was on the 23rd of June 2025. So approximately 7 months from now, we have been actually moving up in a straight line for now a couple of weeks, which is actually a move that I didn't even notice myself. So but according to these military tensions, obviously oil price has been going up. And you know what? It makes you wonder. Like America's putting so much tensions in. They have definitely been having navy movements going towards Iran as well, just to have some intimidation tactics or actually to progress further with this. But what's really happening to the U.S. Navy? Well, you have your top super carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, and that is actually suffering through some sewage overflow issues. So you've got a president that is absolutely just wanting to push war and go ahead with it, but it's nuclear powered supercarrier is actually struggling with your normal plumbing issues. So we're not going to go too graphic into images over here because obviously we don't want to upset you guys. But yeah, it's really hilarious to see a country push forward for war so much while its strongest supercarrier can't even manage its own plumbing. It's hilarious.
Hmm.
And then after that, if that wasn't enough, by the way, Trump's administration, after being taken down from the Supreme Court to not being able to implement tariffs, is like, not only are we not going to pull away from that, we're actually going to increase our tariffs from 10% to 15%. That is absolutely crazy. So, with that being said, what does that currently look like for Trump? Well, you know what? When you look at Fox News and what the polling is saying for Trump, actually 64% of people are disapproving of Trump's tariffs. And that really says a lot because Fox News is actually a conservative news entity. So they're actually in support generally of the Republican Party. But for them to come out like this really goes to show that even the Post or the Washington Post itself is actually not in favor of Trump with relevance with Fox News. So really interesting news. And then when we look at the stock market as a whole, to be honest, you can just see stock market equities and all things consideration. The S&P 500 for America, yeah, that may be holding just 2% below all-time highs. Gold making its way up. Apple, all these as we come into tech, go from like 10 to 20% below their all-time highs. A little bit into more risky tech, and then we just go straight into crypto. And crypto is just straight 50% below all-time highs. So you can see that really the risk appetite right now is very minimal. And when it's supposed to come back, obviously we can't certainly say that. But for now, when it comes to the risk appetite, there's no easy way of saying it, guys. It's just not there. And people are not willing to take that risk. If we actually have a look at from risk into Bitcoin, you can see recently that on the weekly chart, as we move towards this Fibonacci support of 64K, we have just been going downwards consistently. And look, initially I was in belief that these wicks were a healthy measure. And look, to a certain extent, it is slowing down the momentum. But for now, as this is just getting bought up, which is a decent sign, to be honest, and hopefully we can hold this Fibonacci level. The truth is, we have actually had 6 consecutive weeks in the red, which is not easy for any investor to have to go through, especially at this much. So definitely understand it, but we're here to strip out the emotions from this particular process and give you share our opinion with you guys, and but also we empathize and we understand. And lastly, I think one of the most interesting charts that we have over here, and we've been covering for a while, is the ETH BTC chart. And ETH BTC obviously broke out of this particular descending trend line, and now it's just going down with it, which is not the most healthiest sign. To a certain extent, it is still respecting the trend line, and we can see over here that on the MACD, we are slowly starting to possibly reverse this trend. But honestly, right now, there is no clear signal or clear identifier that actually tells us that risk on appetite is immediately going to kick in. So, from the news events that we have covered midweek, and at the same time, some of this analysis, to be honest, it's just kind of a wait and watch kind of a game, and nothing in confirmation just yet to give us direction. But we'll get Steve's interpretation on that a little bit stronger, and let's see what he has to say.
Okay. Well, thanks for that, Yash. And it's been a great introduction in terms of the current situation. And taking from the USS General Ford, at this point in time, we are literally looking at a shit show. And
Yeah, we are.
and
We are.
it's a shame to pretty much just say it that way. And it literally is looking along those lines at this point in time.
Yeah.
Until, as you said, there's literally a change in trend, as we can literally see. And we can fairly much just take a look at what is going on. We'll start with Bitcoin, as you've just been alluding to. And like we were saying, even over on the weekend, we've been literally looking at this 66,000 line, really, in relation to that support level there. And literally Monday was the breaking point of that 66,000 level. So it went straight through that area there. And then it's basically hit a prior support line from that point overall after that. And that support line was 63,500. Hit that area there and has bounced from that area. So if you want some solace, there's some. Where it goes from there, though, who knows? Well, basically, it's come back to try and attempt to actually come back up towards this area here of that 66,000 support level where it actually had broken through on Monday. It's testing that as we speak from the State of the Union address that was actually just given a couple of hours ago from President Trump himself. So as he was actually finishing up that speech, Bitcoin was testing that area right then at that point, as all of the other coins were testing around about that point as well. It was really, really interesting just watching that action as he was finishing up that speech. Came up, tested that area, but as you can see as well, and I'll enlarge the graph as you can see as well too, and whereabouts did it really hit? Pretty much smack bang on the short-term level in terms of the moving average. And it's come back ever since from there. And you're pretty much seeing that with all of the other coins as well, Ethereum being another, coming back and basically testing that area, and it's hovering just beneath it right now. All of the other coins doing essentially the same thing as well. Bitcoin Cash was actually showing some strength previous on the weekend. Look what it's done since. Absolutely appalling. Really, really bad reaction all the way through. As Bitcoin was falling through, Bitcoin Cash went oof, really, really fell through. There have been some signs of some strength amongst some of the others. Polygon, in particular, is actually doing reasonable. I wouldn't say it's doing fantastic, but it's actually holding itself above the short-term support levels. A couple of other exceptions. Solana, not doing too badly. It's actually bouncing off a support level overall. And Uniswap, not doing too badly at all as well. I had actually had a little bit of a position in Uniswap at one stage, didn't perform all that well at one particular stage there, got out there, It's actually seeming to actually start to recover again now. It's just too topsy-turvy though. So it's just one of those areas where it's just like, could be not, who knows?
Mm,
That kind of thing there. It really depends in terms of your risk profile more than anything else. So it's along the lines of really deciding what it wants to do, but it's just too up in the air. It's formed another lower high here at this lower low, I should say, at this point here. So it's just indecisive. That's the biggest thing overall. So really, we're not 100% too sure what's going on. In the meantime, what's going on with all the other things that we normally discuss? Gold, higher highs, higher lows. Okay? People are trying to find a flight to safety somewhere with all of this mess going on. That's essentially what's happening overall. That's the same thing with gold futures and with the gold ETF. Silver. Now, this is an interesting one. Look at this. Silver futures. What's it done since
yeah.
we spoke last? It's broken above the VWAP.
I
Wow.
saw that today, and honestly, I was telling a friend of mine to be like, "Hey, do you want to like look at maybe easing out of your silver position a little bit?" And he's like, "Why? It's just been named one of the most critical mineral ever." And I'm just like,
Mm,
maybe it's a good time to take some profits off the table. But then I saw this particular price structure breakout, and I'm like, if that actually holds, who
mm.
knows what's the next move over here?
Yeah, look at that though. Okay, so it's actually broken through that VWAP now. Now it's a matter of seeing whether or not it actually maintains itself and stays above that VWAP.
Mm,
Then you can basically now say relative strength is starting to come into this as well. So gold has already been expressing itself, and we'll go back up to that chart. Gold itself has already been expressing itself in terms of the strength for quite a while compared to silver. Now silver's starting to really kick in and get that strength in as well. So
mm,
there we go. So overall, the precious metals are really, really starting to kick in and really show their strength overall. The DXY floundering around a little bit, but interestingly enough, it is now starting to actually close up above that 50-day moving average. So the strength is really starting to kick in. If you start hearing in the media, oh no, hang on, the dollar's starting to fall and starting to get weak and everything like that, ignore that news, okay? Because it's really not showing.
mm,
That's interesting there. And like you were also saying in terms of the indices, starting to show some improvement there in relation to some of them, but be a little wary. All that's been going on in relation to the indices is a bounce off these long-term support areas. That's all that's really going on. We had another test of it there. Compared to where we were at the end of last week, we're actually still a little bit down compared to Friday with all of the indices. Essentially flat to a little bit down. That's essentially what's going on. Because if you look at this, this is where Friday is. This is the Dow Jones I'm looking at right now. Friday, we're down in terms of things. Okay, we're still below the actual short-term moving averages for the Dow. We go to the Russell. Where are we there? Compared to Friday, we're a little bit down. We're a little bit above the short-term moving averages, but all we've done is bounced off the
mm,
short-term moving average. That's all we've done. If we go back up to the SPY, where are we in the SPY? We've bounced off off the 100-day moving average there. We're below the VWAP still on the
mm,
SPY. Okay, so there's still relative weakness compared to the Dow and the Russell. So the SPY is still looking a little bit weaker, even though it's above the short-term moving averages, being that yellow line that's under there. And the Qs, we're still well below the VWAP.
mm.
And we've just bounced off the 150-day moving average. So overall, we've still got relative weakness on the SPY as well as the Qs compared to the Dow and the Russell. Still a little bit of iffiness when it comes to the indices and the overall scheme of things. Precious metals are still a lot stronger in relation to everything there. It looks like that flight to safety going on there. And then when you take a look at the crypto sector,
Mm.
still a lot of weakness there, unfortunately. Although it looks as though there are some areas where there may still be a little peaks of strength going on overall, but not really much going on there until we get, like you were saying, that trend change really popping through and really starting to drag things up. Other than that, though, mate, well, I think that's probably all we can really say during the midweek. We've just got to really keep an eye on those levels and see if anything else breaks or whatever the case is. But do remember, We are talking about the end of Wednesday down here in Australia, the start of Wednesday over in the US, and what's happening after the bell on Wednesday over in the US? We've got the big earnings coming up overall there.
Mm,
Everyone might be still sitting on their hands, really, and that might be the reason why we haven't had that much movement from Friday in terms of the US indices overall. We're still waiting on that big movement from Nvidia and a lot of the other big names.
yeah. And if Nvidia shouts out amazing things for AI and says they've made a lot of money, then
Mhm.
honestly, who cares about geopolitical tensions? We might skyrocket up, but no. Obviously, we can't be certain of that, so let's see how we go. But look, honestly, on that, guys, oil is currently the headline risk proxy right now. If geopolitics keeps oil bid, then at the end of the day, the next move will probably be decided by what happens with rates and what happens with these particular earnings. As always, we'd love for you to give us any feedback or anything that we could do differently, or even something what you like about what we do. So feel free to comment down there, drop us a like if you're happy with what we do. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining in, and we will see you on the weekend.